want to tell you a story about my life today. I know that you don't know me, and I seem to be an older woman, but this is a story about when I was very young. And I want to share with you how I got this. It's a scepter, if you don't know. And how I got this. This is a signet ring. My name is Esther, and when I was very young, my parents died, and I was an orphan. And you know, when you're an orphan, you don't have a lot of expectations. You don't have a lot of expectations about what can you be when you grow up? Who can you be when you grow up? And so I didn't have very many. My uncle took me in. His name was Mordecai. He was a great man. He was a man of great wisdom. He sat at the gates of the town, actually. He sat at the city gates, and people would come to him and ask his advice. And he helped to establish the laws and the government. I loved Mordecai. He was a great man. But still, I was an orphan. Still, I was taken into his house, and it was beyond what he really wanted his life to be, to take someone else's child in to raise. But he raised me, and he raised me well. And one day, when I was still very, very young, I was about 16, there was a decree that came that the king was looking for a new wife. And he was asking for all of the maidens, all of the virgins, to come to the palace. And you would stay there for a year, and during that year, you got beauty treatments. I can remember thinking, who would be the person that would be chosen to be the queen? I had never been inside the palace. I'd always wondered what it looked like in there. I'd always wondered what kind of clothes did they wear to the parties, and what happened inside that beautiful palace. But you see, I was a Hebrew girl. I was Hebrew. My name was Hadassah, and my uncle Mordecai, he said, "Don't tell anyone your name. You tell them that your name is Esther." And so I got to go to the palace. And I thought, you know what, I most likely will only be there for a year, but that year I could see everything that happened in that palace. And during that year I had 7 tutors. I had 7 people that were assigned to me. And those 7 tutors taught me everything. They taught me the protocol of the palace. They taught me the protocol of the king, and they taught me etiquette. They taught me which fork to use, because I had never been taught the finer things of life as a Hebrew girl and as an orphan. And I thought, this is a great time. And then the time came for the king to choose a wife. And when the night that I was to go into the king, when it was my turn, I was very frightened. I can't tell you that I wasn't. I can't tell you that it was exciting for me. It was very frightening. And when I went in and I was with the king, and then the word came. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? The word came that I was chosen to be the queen. Hadassah, the Hebrew girl that is an orphan girl, that never dreamed of being the queen? The queen. Oh my goodness, I can't tell you what my wedding was like. It was so beautiful. And you know, some people have said that the king is a very evil man, and that he was wicked, and that he wasn't kind. But he was kind to me. He was very kind to me. And I appreciated him, and he was my husband. He was my husband. But I understood the protocol of the palace. I understood the etiquette. But now I was the queen. I mean, think of it. I was the queen. I had a closet of beautiful clothes. I can't tell you what it was like. I had every kind of food imaginable that my mind could think up at my disposal to eat. It was exciting times. It was a great life. And then one day, after I'd been the queen for a few years and enjoying everything, and I had all kinds of handmaidens around me, and we used to get together and just tell stories. You know, if you're a woman, you love to tell stories. And one day, my uncle sent word, and he said, Esther, he said, there's a man in the palace that is plotting to kill us, and you must go to the king and tell him. Oh, when I read that note, when I read that, I said, no. I said, I can't go to the king. What is he asking me? You know, my uncle is very wise. My uncle's a wise man, and he's well respected, and he's a man of great righteousness. And to my uncle, etiquette doesn't mean anything. Protocol doesn't mean anything. He's a man of integrity. He's a man of righteousness, but he didn't understand what I was up against. He didn't understand that to go to the king without being invited, even though I was the queen, even though I was his wife, I couldn't just go in. And so I sent word back and I said, I can't. I haven't been invited to come into the king's presence for over 30 days now. You can't ask this of me. Did he not know what all I had and what all I could lose? Did he not understand that I could lose my life? And the word came back. You know, my uncle, he's not a soft man, and he's not a man that takes no for an answer. And when the word came back, he said, think not that God will not raise up another if you do not do this, but you and your family will be killed. But God will raise up another. And when I read it, I thought, I know my uncle's right. I know that my uncle is so right, but I could lose my life. And I prayed, and I spent tonight agonizing before the Lord. It wasn't an easy decision. You know, it's never an easy decision that you have to obey God or save your life. When you're faced with that, there's no easy answer. And when I woke in the morning, I had made my decision that yes, I will do this. But first, please, Uncle, I will pray and fast for 3 days, and all my handmaidens will pray and fast. And please pray and fast with us. And those 3 days were agonizing days. I don't think I slept at all. I don't think I slept. I don't think anyone that was around me slept. And I prayed and I prayed, and I kept thinking, surely God won't ask me to do this. It can't be that God would want me to do this. And on the morning of that third day, I knew that it had to be. I knew that no matter what I felt, no matter what I thought, no matter what, I had to give my life for my people. That it was my reasonable service. It's all that I could do. It's what I had to do. And I remember that morning like it was yesterday. I walked into my closet, and my handmaiden that was beside me, I could feel the agony in her heart, and I could feel the anguish, and I could feel her thinking, surely you're not going to do this. You're not going to do this. And I remember looking at my closet and feeling all the chiffon and the beautiful dresses and all the fabrics, and thinking, what would you wear on the day you're going to die? I put on one of my most beautiful dresses because, you know, even though it could be my last day as the queen, I wanted to look good. And so I put on my dress and I began my walk. That walk, every step, every moment, every second, I felt the presence of the Almighty God. I felt Him walking beside me. I felt the angels' wings as they brushed around me. And I remember going through the courtyard and looking at the flowers and smelling the flowers. They had never smelled so beautiful. The breeze that was blowing, and I could hear the chirping of the birds in the trees. And every step I took, walking toward those giant doors, those doors where behind those doors was my husband, was the king. And he was there that day, and the court was filled, and they were making new decisions, and he was making new rulings, and I knew that it was filled with many, many men. And I looked at those doors, and they were so tall that even the doorknob was almost taller than me. And I can remember when I grew up, when I took that doorknob and I opened it, and I had my head down because I was afraid. I wanted to hide myself. I wanted to hide, but I knew that I had to do what I had to do. And I can remember when I looked up into the king's eyes, and I could hear the gasping of the men in that courtroom. I could hear the whispers, and I could hear the men just gasping for their breath because they knew that I had not followed protocol. I had barged in on a men's meeting. I had come into a place that I was not supposed to be, and especially if the king had not invited me. I had come into a place where it would mean my death. And yet there I stood, and I didn't dare look at them. I didn't dare look to the right or to the left. I didn't dare look at any of them except in my husband's eyes. I looked in his eyes. With my eyes, I was pleading and I was begging, and I kept looking at him. I kept my eyes just stayed up on him. And when he looked down and he looked into my eyes, I saw the compassion building. And I thought, surely God is with me today. Surely God is with me today. And then the king stood up from his throne, and he reached down and he handed me the scepter. And he said, my bride, what is it that you want? Up to half of my kingdom. I knew I had found favor. But you know, my uncle had taught me something. Because I was raised in Mordecai's home, and because he had been my mentor, and he had been the one that had walked me through life, he had taught me wisdom. He had shown me the wisdom of God, and as I looked, I didn't know what to say. I hadn't thought of what would I say. I hadn't thought of how would I say this in front of all of these men. How would I say it? You see, the man that wanted to kill my people was the man that's sitting next to my husband, was his confidant. He was the second in command in all the kingdom. And there he was. And I knew that I couldn't just say that to my husband. So I said, well, can you come to my chamber for dinner tonight? And my husband said, delighted to come to your chamber for dinner tonight. And I said, well, would you mind bringing Haman with you? And he said, of course, Haman would be delighted. And oh, he was. He was so excited to come to the queen's quarters for dinner. I ran back. I ran through that courtyard. I ran as fast as I could. I ran back to my chambers, and I said to the cook, cook the king's favorite food. Cook everything that he likes. He's coming for dinner tonight. And that night when they came in for dinner and we sat, and there was beautiful music playing, and it was so sweet, and it was such a precious dinner. And I thought, should I tell him tonight? But you know, remember, my uncle had taught me wisdom. My uncle had taught me that the spirit of wisdom would rule and reign in my life. And even though protocol had not been followed, wisdom was there with me, that spirit of wisdom. And I looked at my king, and he said, my wife, what do you want? Up to half of my kingdom, what is it that you want? And I said, well, I'd like for you to come to dinner again tomorrow night. You see, half of me was scared. I was afraid. I didn't know, how was I going to tell him? This man sitting here wants to kill my people. You see, the king didn't know that I was Hebrew. My husband didn't know. No one in the palace knew that I was a Hebrew daughter. And so the next night they came, and oh, by then Haman was very smug. He was very arrogant. He was very excited. He felt that it meant something wonderful, that he would be invited into my chambers for dinner. And after dinner that night, the king said, "What is it you want?" And I said, "Well, you see, there is someone in the kingdom that's plotting to kill me. And not only me, but all of my people, my whole nation." And the king jumped up because I had so much favor in his sight. He jumped up and he said, "Who is this person that would do this to you, my wife?" And I said, "This man sitting here." Well, that was the story. You see, the very news that Haman had prepared to kill my uncle, and the very plotting that he had done to kill all of my people, he was hung the next day on that noose. And then the king, knowing that I'm Hebrew, knowing of my nationality, knowing of my people, he called for my uncle to come to the palace. And my uncle got to come and live in that palace with me. And not only that, but my uncle was given this ring. You see, it's a signet ring. And everything that the king decrees is sealed with his signet. But now I have the same authority as the king. Now I carry the scepter, and now I have the ring. And now my uncle gets to make the decrees. And there's so many more stories that I could tell you today about my life. But that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the saving of my nation. And I wanted to share that with you today. Thank you.